I'm a Lambo person.
Really? That's actually surprising to me because Lambo is more hot boy, and Ferrari feels more refined and
I take it
decidedly
back. I'm actually
Italian.
probably more Porsche than I am Lambo anyway.
I mean, you're a DeLorean person.
Yeah, I am. Every time driving while awesome posts about a DeLorean, I always respond like living the dream.
Living the dream.
Love those wide cars.
Love.
Very wide.
It's silverback like a gorilla.
We have a
Body.
card this week.
How much
Really?
does a DeLorean cost? Like, if you were going to get a
Good
30 to 50.
drivable DeLorean,
A
30 to
drivable
50?
DeLorean probably about 30.
What about with a Rivian engine in it
So
for
if you
you?
paid
That's
50
your ultimate dream car.
If you paid
60 plus.
$50,000, you could get a reasonable DeLorean.
I play what?
$50,000, you get a reasonable DeLorean.
Yeah.
So it's not like this completely out of reach
No,
thing.
it's not.
It's an attainable
It
thing.
is.
Oh.
$50,000.
They might
Who
have
you
gone
think you
up. That
kidnapped?
used to
Chelsea
be
Clinton?
that used to be the rule of thumb. The rule of thumb was you're going to usually
Welcome.
spend about 30K. If you buy one for 10, it's going to need probably about 15 of work. But so it might have changed. So it's probably still around 30 to 50.
I mean, that seems great because that's about the price of a new
Car?
anything.
Yeah.
A new whatever. Whatever you buy is like $30,000.
It's okay that you breezed over my rush hour quote and didn't correct me and say $50 million.
$150,000?
$50 million? Who do you think you kidnapped? Chelsea Clinton?
$150,000.
Nothing lasts forever and everything grows and changes. But sometimes things can change that we don't want to. Things that we like, how they are, will become something else. Fads come and go. Traditions fade and even get lost to time.
It's like a haiku or something. It's a straight poem over
Is
here.
coffee and the cafe culture the way it is now a forever thing? Question mark. How does it grow? Question mark. What is sacred? Question mark. Is it all just art? Question mark.
Is it all just art?
That
What
last
do you mean,
one.
is it all just art?
This does feel like you were sitting there in the rain somewhere. like just like nothing's ever
forest
gonna
by
be the
itself.
same again.
I was thinking of artistry specifically and how in orientation we talk about, artistry is one of our values. And so we want to think of everything as art.
Mm.
So is stuff is cafe culture
Is cafe culture
is cafe culture is it just art?
Is it all just
Is
art?
it always going
summation?
to is it always going to change, or is the process the thing that's important?
nation?
I
is
wanted to get
Latin
into
dead?
the idea of artistry in cafe culture.
Oh,
That's a different question.
that's a whole.
But these kind of lead into it. Like
I kind of agree
art-
with Jared. I feel like this is what happened. You had the best day of your entire life, the absolute best day ever. And to cap off the best day, you went for a drive, you went up to the woods, you found a nice spot to hike in, started drizzling and raining, and it was beautiful. And in that moment, when those first raindrops hit your face, you realized that this was just one moment in time,
No, it's
and
over.
nothing's
It's
ever
there.
going to be the same again. And you can enjoy the sweetness of it, but it's also depressing in its own way because it's never coming back. You need to cultivate new moments.
And
Never
that's
coming
the
back.
same moment they had when they ripped the arms off of that statue by Michelangelo, and now it's an armless statue. Still famous.
We're going back
still
to
beautiful
that.
art.
We're going back to that.
I'm just saying that art still stands. People still go look at it and take pictures of it, and somehow still beautiful. To
My
me,
chair's sinking
no.
into the
To
ground.
people, yes. I don't think get it,
You just don't appreciate people that don't have arms, dude.
dude.
Pretty fucked up, man.
I'm
Pretty
s-
messed up.
I'm pretty ableist, so I guess that's my problem.
Jared will walk up to a guy with no arms and be like,
Like,
high five.
Yeah, like what a loser. I wouldn't, guys. Okay,
Oh,
that's the joke.
welcome to the team. Let me shake your hand.
Hey.
High five. Okay. Thinking about like traditions
yeah.
and cafe culture, think about like latte art. Like that is kind of cemented. That's always going to kind of be, you're always going to pour a Rosetta the same way you pour a Rosetta. So thinking about 10 years from now, how much of that is going to be the same versus are the trends going to change? Is latte art going to be the same? Is the way the culture thinks about coffee going to be the same? Is that a tradition that you guys want to see held, or are you guys open for it to change?
Yeah, I think I'm open in general for a lot of things to change. By necessity, I don't think you can look at anything into finite of a box.
Yeah.
I think that latte art as a concept is going to be here forever, but like you're going to see evolution. You're going to see machines doing different pours. You're going to see people pours, but there's going to be levels and layers to every single business practice that you have in the world. And so you can integrate whatever you want at whatever rate you want. You know, there's still places in the world that don't do latte art at all, still in business, and they make money. So for me, using latte art's not necessarily. Oh well, I guess none of this, in my opinion, is like 100% sacred when it comes to business being able to fully provide. You could choose something sacred if you wanted to keep it really small and like find a way to survive in a place that would support that. But you have to, if you're going to have coffee as a business, which is again maybe a different question than the overarching scheme, which is, do you want to be at home, you know, like Chris does, and make it exactly how you want to make it all the time, and then you can do whatever you want, you know?
Well, I think that's why I was asking, because coffee is, a big part of our business.
Yeah, it's culinary.
So how do we? It's culinary.
Fully culinary.
How do we
With a hard E.
looking?
Ew.
How do we looking forward? Like, how much of if you were to look down the road, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, what does the culture experience inside Cat and Cloud look like?
Oh.
Another different question.
And how much of the artistry at the heart of it is going to be the same, and how much? Listen, I wrote this card 2 hours ago. Okay.
I mean, are you looking for specifics or?
I'm looking for a
It's-
discussion.
You looking for just a general
Are we-
conversation? we
okay,
have for
because
about
I mean,
30,
there
40
might be a
minutes?
difference between what it looks like in Cat and Cloud versus what the coffee culture is doing. Because I would argue that there is no coffee culture. The social media and the way ideas spread now almost
Yeah.
ensure that there is no one main line of culture. There are multiple different cultures held together by a lot of different threads. Like there's these clumps that are connected in different areas, which is not just something that's unique to coffee. I think everything works like that now. Somebody asked me about skateboarding, what's up with skate culture? I'm like, there's no skate culture. There's a million different little skate cultures. There's 100 different subcultures, which is different than what it felt like in 1993 when there was, a very specific through line of skate culture and the industry were just this one thing, or you could point to it and say, that's skateboarding. There's little niches within that, but overall, if you picked up Thrasher or watched 411, you would have a pretty good idea of what's going on in the industry. But now everything's just so spread out. There's no one keeper of the culture.
I mean, even if you were like that, and even at the time when we were competing, like competition companies at the time were most closely related to those that had cultural influence in specialty coffee. And nowadays, there are some, but you could actually be an amazing barista competitor that has nothing to do with translating to the culture of your company whatsoever.
Yeah.
And even through competing in barista competitions back in the day, some of the ways that Chris and I would approach it would be even in speaking to that concept in and of itself. Like this culture of barista competitions is not reflective of what we're trying to do in our own companies. So we happen to be in coffee at a time where these two things worked in tandem. But yeah, they don't anymore. And they even kind of didn't then, I mean, all these different individual competitions reflects very little on how the day-to-day operations of any company works and or even maybe feel. So yeah, you're right. It's a ton of different things, and I guess you have to specify what your is. If you want to know it, yeah.
But I think
Cat and Cloud looks like it's a whole different question.
Yeah, because if I'm thinking about Cat and Cloud, the core of what we stand for can be the same, and the experience can be completely different. Like the experience can evolve with time, and everything else can change. Like these core values, like take something like hospitality.
Yeah.
Hospitality, our version of hospitality, it doesn't really matter if we make lattes or make rice bowls or make pizza or make cocktails or anything. Like all of the individual specifics of what we do can change. Like coffee preparation could undergo this huge, I don't think it will, but it could theoretically undergo this huge thing where it's like the way we've been brewing coffee is not how we do it before.
Yeah.
Espresso is completely different. We've actually been doing it all wrong, and we have different machines and different this and different that. But that's not still that's really not going to change what our end goal is, which is to delight people with these amazing experiences they're going to remember forever.
I
Is-
doubled down. I mean, we've talked about that concept from the beginning of the company's inception, even down to the name not being Cat and Cloud Coffee, right? Is all going to be how can we live up and represent values, a mission, and create a company brand that'll allow us to do what we'd like to do to best deliver those concepts of our mission and values through whatever lens. And we felt like we were always able to. We wanted to leave the door open to be
More?
I don't want to say more though, because I feel like that's the more or multiple things.
Other.
Sure, yeah, diverse maybe is the way to say
Yeah,
that for me.
that's a better word.
You know, because it's not like it's not more than coffee. It's even if we add the restaurant concept to our breakfast service, it's not more than coffee. It's different. We're able. Oh, Charles is delivering.
Thank you.
Look at those
Oh,
seasoned
what a
stone
guy.
fruits.
Oh, appreciate
Wow.
that.
Hospitality.
Hey,
So yeah,
Hospo Chuck.
so yeah. I mean, that's actually been clear, and maybe it's been clear to probably Charles, Chris, and myself, but maybe not clearly stated since the beginning, even though we've talked about it in passing over and over again. Is that we always keep the door open.
Well, that's kind of why I was asking this, was because coffee has gone through this change of it was a commodity, then it turned into a craft, and now it's kind of I see us stepping more into the hospitality realm where it's just like, yeah, we make amazing coffee, but we make amazing experiences that inspire people.
Yeah,
And at that point, you could interchange, and I think I've always kind of said this, you could interchange coffee with any other thing.
right.
And you get into the world where, we could open up a hot chicken sandwich place that delivers the same hospitality and level of experience that we deliver in one of the cafes.
Yeah.
And so it's just thinking about the coffee specific side of it, to where you see all these alternatives that are popping up where it's like mud water, everyone else who is looking at the commodity aspect of coffee and trying to replace it with something. But the hospitality side when it comes to a business is still there. So it's just like, is there a world where the coffee side goes away, or I don't know.
You're kind of seeing also a reflection too of a couple of things. You're seeing a reflection of our personal values being portrayed in some capacity through our business, right, as we've evolved into it. And then you're seeing some strategy to that as well. You know, like if we specifically wanted to only be a successful monetary business through coffee, we might approach it differently, right?
Yeah.
But you're seeing a few things involved, like, and there's gray and overlap, but you know, if you were to sort of break it down based on the things that Chris talks about a lot, right? There's a lot of hospitality service relating to building individuals up. That kind of meets building individuals, whatever, and their ability to share their gifts through this thing that we do, and then also this respect and love of falling in love with your work and your craft, which is kind of where it bleeds into my part too. And he really appreciates experiences. I love the concept of building experiences. So we see ourselves like meeting in this place. Charles also loves to kind of, between the two of us, like create space for people to live experiences out, right?
Yeah.
He's talked about how sending people on origin and trips in the past has been something he's really been proud of. So you are experiencing our manifestation of values and perspective in a business. And I think it's worth a note, you know, that we could be totally successful and not deliver maybe the experience on the level that we'd be interested in, or evolving experiences, probably still be really, really successful. And there's a lot of companies out there that are, you know, Starbucks is probably being one of them. You know, I mean, there's probably even local brands here that.
How so? How is Starbucks?
Well, they're doing a repetitive coffee business,
I mean,
right? Like if a strategy
yeah.
was for us to only crank, then there's things we could do, right? You can make sure that training takes only a day because everything is button push. And
Yeah.
I don't actually see a problem with that. I see how the necessity became true. They took on money and they're like, we have to get to this level and we have to do X plus Y.
Well, and that's kind of gets into the artistry of it. Because thinking about this, you think of things that we do that, like we have a puck press that's sitting in here in the training lab because it came out of storage.
Mm-hmm.
And you think of all these ways where people are trying to automate the process to bring consistency.
Yeah.
So how much of what we do now, the way we train things in our cafe as far from the coffee side, how much of that artistry can translate? Like, is the artistry the specific steps that we do now, or the process of learning new steps and putting them into practice?
I think it's open. I mean, everything you do, you can do it through this artistic lens. So it's not about like if you broke down making espresso.
Yeah.
And you looked at how we did it now and thought about it from the point of view of I'm an artist, which means that I have to do this with intention. That means every little thing that I do matters and contributes to a solid quality whole. And you can see that when people are skimping on the little things, because espresso is just a million little things all
Yeah.
put together, right? If you fuck up your tamping, you might get a channel. Shot's not going to taste good. Same thing with dosing, distribution, how you put the portafilter in the group head without slamming it around. Do you let it sit in there for a while, or do you immediate insert and brew? You're serving it right away. It's all these little things, and you break one of those, and it's not as good as it could be. But I think within those things, not all of them have to be sacred. And if you decide that you want to remove one of them, let's say you take tamping out of the equation and you use a puck press, then you can just embrace the new process in the same way. Like, you still have a bunch of steps to do, because you're not employed as a tamping machine, right? You're not a latte machine. If you want to get to the core of what people are doing, and this is why I think a lot of third wave coffee isn't actually third wave coffee. It's specialty coffee masquerading as third wave in the traditional sense. So if we were going to sum up the waves,
Yeah.
right, let's say you already nailed the first one. The first wave of coffee is coffee as a commodity, something that you drink. You don't think much about it. It's fuel for your morning. It comes in a can that lives on a grocery store shelf. You buy it.
Yeah.
I don't give a shit what it is. It's Folgers, it's U-Band, it's whatever. The second wave of coffee is the coming of the latte. Starbucks is the most shining example of a second wave coffee shop, where it's the specialty beverage, right?
Mhm.
Coffee with various amounts of milk, mochas, lattes, cappuccinos, all these things that weren't part of American culture, but now all of a sudden they are. But still, the focus, the big distinction between second wave and third wave, even though the drink menu is about the same, is that third wave coffee isn't about the beverages, it's about the actual product of coffee and seeing coffee as this culinary thing. That coffee, each individual coffee is a special thing because it comes from a special place with a certain terroir. It's got varietals. It's about 3 times as complex as something like wine is. If you're talking about volatile
Yeah.
aromatic compounds,
Mm.
wine's in the mid 200s, coffee's just over 800. So in terms of experience, what you can glean from it, that's what third wave coffee is all about, highlighting the coffee itself. But most of us who, are lumped into this third wave category are really more second wave, where our business is mostly focused on making lattes, making cappuccinos, making mochas, making chais. We're specialty beverage, dealers. So back to the barista. Your job isn't to tamp. Your job isn't to insert and brew. Those are steps that you take. But really, your job is about taking this coffee, this raw product that's been roasted and given to you, and delivering it to someone in its ultimate expression. Dialing in is the work of the barista. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like optimizing these flavors, which is why, something like barista competition is so interesting to us, because it gives you the opportunity to deep dive in these
Right.
things that
Nuance.
Yeah, this little nuance. You get this hyper
Expression.
focus. You're going through all these different coffees. Like, what coffee is going to do this? Breaking it apart. Like, that's really the job of the barista, is a taster. So it's like, if you take away tamping, like, I like tamping, but it's
Yeah.
not like I'm going to be angry about it if the industry decides that we don't tamp anymore and we can still make delicious coffee with it, because that's not the thing. Automated milk steamer. I like steaming milk because I want it a certain way, but again, I don't think any of these things are, you know, I'm agnostic to them. Like, I would actually like for us to do, not us, but just as an industry, do what we say. It's like coffee's so much more advanced than it was 10 or 15 years ago. But the average espresso I get really isn't, the average
It's actually
espresso's
worse.
probably better, but I don't get as many good
I guess
shots. Yeah.
average, I should
On-
say, across
on
all.
Actually,
yeah.
I should say, like,
Yeah.
you're right. We're both right, because I can
I
get
know
an
what you're saying. The
average
levels
espresso
up
more
across the board.
places.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
It's like I can walk into X place downtown that has a La Marzocco and get a decent espresso.
But you used to be able to go to certain places and know it was going to be one of the best you ever had in your
absolutely
life.
amazing espresso, and that happens less often
Yeah,
now.
exactly. Those places.
So it's this shakeup where it's like, man, if we really want to be about it, we can take our art much more seriously than a lot of us do.
Well, here's I think where artistry has evolved and has become necessary, and also, and it's frustrating, is that especially coffee, if you want to run it at the level that we're talking about, is kind of a slow food nation sort of thing. It's something you shouldn't have to crank. Like, the best of us could crank a lot of it. And this is saying the best of us, right? Like the NBA stars of coffee, the professional coffee maker baristas that we were doing could crank out a lot of coffee pretty fast, but like there's a level of experience and time and effort that goes to getting people to that level, and monetarily the businesses don't really reward that. So you would actually need to invest in serving less people for that level to remain consistent, unless you start adjusting what it looks like to be an artist. And that's where you say yourself, in my opinion, how can I take this raw product and dial it in for a group of people to use and make sure that they don't change that experience very much, so that the quality and flavor is up. And that's, I think, what I would say what business has forced us to do, what consumerism has forced us to do, to be able to stay in between inflation and the need to crank out many things over. Some of that's good, some of that's frustrating, but that's, I think, where we see a huge dichotomy, is you have the world expecting the same speed of service as a Starbucks or a Pete's or a Dunkin' or whatever, or anywhere, right? They expect that service level. We charge more, so if we're going to charge more, it better be fast, because my time is money. And we're still getting to the place where more and more people understand and appreciate the quality across the board. So you go back to latte art, and it's like, that's your moniker. It always has been the moniker for people who don't understand. It's got latte art, it's specialty coffee.
It's going to
For
be good.
us, who have been in the industry for a long time, latte art actually is not an indicator of that. Latte art could very much be in a second wave coffee shop.
Yeah.
But that's okay,
I made
You just
some
don't
really
know.
crappy coffee back in
but you
2008.
can pour good latte art.
But
'cause
I
you
could
knew.
pour some latte art
Yeah.
on top of it.
Well,
So
So I'd
Yeah.
say that this is where the strategy of artistry can come into play, and it's still to the point of just the value of artistry plays a part to me. It's like, if I was trying to play artist at Starbucks, I would find a way to level up everything and get it repeatable in one capacity as
Yeah.
a system, and then the artistry would live in
Howdy.
the expression and delivery in other places. Does the cup look a certain way? Is the vibe this, that, and the other? And you have to modify that. That's capitalism, baby.
baby,
Well,
Bye-bye.
I think it's just knowing what you want to do.
And then it's knowing what you want to do.
But it's
Because
'cause-
I would love a slow food. We talk about this all the time. I wish our business could support the space for us to do something exactly how we wanted to do it. But that space would require us to serve 100 people a day,
Yeah.
compared to the 300 plus. And the 300 plus is what we need to just pay rent and the people who work in the shop, sort of, give or take, So those are always the things you have to deal with as a business owner, and why it's a tough question to answer.
Oh yeah, I asked the question not like having an answer in mind. It was more of a open-ended.
Maybe a tough question to discuss.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a great
'Cause-
question to discuss.
because for me, a couple different things. When you were talking about the waves of coffee, it was interesting to think how when you go into the third wave and people start looking at specialty coffee, they go, oh, coffee is the art. I need to dive deeper in coffee, and that's the way I'm going to become better at this art, at this craft. Versus going the opposite way and going, it's actually the steps you take, which is the art. And then the coffee is, the coffee's going to get good, better. The coffee's going to get good the more you pay attention to these steps. I don't know. It was just an interesting way of like splitting the waves and going, oh, I have to pay more attention to coffee and like all the different things of like, where's it from? What's the terroir? Like, what's the process? How the process is really the processing method is really what makes it amazing. Or you dive into those things versus, oh no, just be consistent on your problem solving and your practices. And no matter, and that's the real skill to learn. That's where the art comes in. That was just my rough take on it this morning. So I was curious to see if you guys had anything that touched on that, which it sounds like you guys have. I don't know.
Touching all day.
Yeah, you lost me a little bit halfway through that
That's
one, but
fine.
I'm mostly with you.
I'm still in the rain in the forest.
I'm mostly with you.
Still just wishing.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to be Kodak.
Exactly.
That's what you don't want. You don't want to be Kodak.
This is all we do, and it's never going to change, and we're not going to try to adapt.
Yeah. Or have something that's half of it. The Kodak's even worse, where they invented the thing that killed them.
Yeah.
And they just didn't pay attention to it. Kodak invented the digital camera. They invented it. They made digital cameras before anyone else. And were so stubborn and blind and grumpy that they couldn't see what they were actually doing, which isn't making film or making cameras. It's helping people capture memories. And if you look and say, like, how can we help people capture memories? Then a camera, whether it's digital, film, whatever, it's just another tool to help capture memories. And they're just like, we don't do that. We only want to do this. And now they're just a legacy brand who produces small amounts of film. They're a novelty. They
outsource their name.
The biggest film company, camera company, they turn themselves into a novelty. For what? You know, because that's not the art that we do. It's just obnoxious. It's like, I get it. The annoying thing is a lot of people see it in the same way, where it's this or that, but that's not how things are. They could have gone bullish on the digital camera and been today's Sony or Canon or Nikon in that market and still produce the film stocks that they produced. They didn't have to pick a path.
They could have been the leader in everything.
They could have been the leader in everything, but they saw it as this black and white. We only do this. And I just don't ever want to get there. And I want to be able to compartmentalize the things for me that are really special. And I do not want to compromise on it all. It's great. I can take those in and I can turn them into hobbies and I can make them the way I want to make them and realize that that is different than Cat and Cloud and the business and the opportunity that we have here. You know what I mean? And that's why our mission isn't to produce the best cappuccinos that the world's ever seen at a rate of
Sourcing
2 drinks a minute.
the finest and most sustainable coffees in the world.
You know what I mean? Because I think coffee's going to be here forever, but what if it's not? What if it goes away? You know, what if coffee turns into film and it just turns into a super niche thing? What are we going to do? Just say like, yeah, it's been fun. Cool. Just going to hang up our livelihood because we don't have anything to offer the world. That's lazy.
Well, see, and that's where I think artistry for me lives in slight expansion to what you're talking, not expansion, a different approach, right? You're saying you can take those things that you hold super dear and bring them home and nail them, which is the way that I would have to do some things right now. And then there's the other side of me, which is like, or if we can provide an opportunity for this place to sustain itself so that myself and the people that want to create this small niche thing in the future and it works, then we can still, it's the same, like for Kodak.
I got a great example of that. Actually, I was talking to someone the other day and their wife is a wedding photographer. She does wedding photo and video, and that pays the bills. She's really passionate about tintype photography, which is
badass.
Recently trending.
Yeah, it's
you know,
coming
you
back.
see it pop up more and more. But
What's their name?
I don't even know.
Great.
It's called Tintype Person.
Tintype wedding person. But it's a labor-intensive process.
Sure.
You know, it's not something that you could do as a viable business model. But she's
not by
found this
itself.
cool, happy medium to where instead of just making that for herself, when you buy a wedding package from her, you can add like X amount of tintypes. So she gets to do both, which she's playing in the digital and analog space at the same time. And that's kind of like what you're talking about. That could
in
have
its
been
own
Kodak,
capacity, right?
Yeah,
And they could have
and that-
still done what they loved if they were willing to be broad enough or open enough to explore what could sustain them to getting there.
And that's where the nicheization, these niche markets are really cool, these niche cultures, because if you can find enough people who are interested in that thing that you want to do, maybe it doesn't live by itself, but maybe you can add it on. And maybe that's a once a week thing or a once a month gathering,
Right.
or it turns into some sort of someone brought Outstanding in the Field up to me the other day.
Sure.
Where it's like, that's not a restaurant type business model,
No,
but
it's
you
an
can do
event model.
1 or 2 events a month
Yeah.
to a certain audience that can afford it and wants that kind of thing, and it works.
And I went from local to global.
Right.
It's similar idea across every board. And I think that's super cool. And that allows space for everything. But you do have to be, willing to adapt and look at a bigger scope, which I think is a challenge for a lot of people. And it can feel sometimes, if you got into this idea of specialty coffee as it's been. I still hear people all the time who have been in this industry as similar time as us being very frustrated that their team doesn't stir the espresso from bottom to top to deliver it because the flavor is the exact same way. And I'm like, you're getting to that level and I appreciate it. At the same time, you're hung up so much on that you're unable to scale.
Well, that's kind of the heart at what I was getting at.
Yeah.
Those sorts of inherent coffee traditions to where, the nuances of really niche coffee, third wave coffee culture, the stir your espresso this way.
Yeah.
Versus how much of that is a tradition that needs to stay, and how much of it is something that is always going to change.
I mean, for me, I would just liken it. It's a hard one in general, but I would liken it to this. There's a reason that there's only a certain amount of 3 Michelin stars and so on down the line. There's only a certain amount of those places.
Yeah.
And they're going to be doing things at the highest level progressively, even down to 1 star, the highest levels possible, right? Most people can't eat that all day, every day, can't go to those places all the time. And so there's all this other level of food, unless you're going to make it at home, in which case you get this mishmash. But there's levels of preparation and quality all the way up, right?
Yeah.
So I feel the same way about coffee. What is actually viable? And there's a reason that there's so few of these pinnacle places. There's only so much viable there. So that's where we have to decide. And you have to decide based on what you can sustain. So, to me, it's all amazing. I would love to eat at Atelier Kren and then go over to that other place and the other place in Manresa and go eat that food. Maybe it wouldn't be the most healthy, but I would love to go eat that 2-3 times a week. Fuck yeah. Am I going to? Maybe once a year tops,
I'm going to wait for
Also,
this.
street tacos are delicious.
That's what I'm saying. Street tacos are one of my favorite foods in the world. I could eat them every day.
Yeah.
We're going to have to hold.
Yeah.
Still holding.
Beep,
What's-
beep. Pause, sir. Pause. Are you getting this on camera? Stop.
This is what happens to us.
Welcome to the parking lot.
Wise choice. But I think what you're asking, what traditions die or live on, it's none of those traditions are even traditions. Everybody does it a little bit differently. And you see that. I thought it was cool when we were watching barista competitions and everyone would have super specific instructions on how to drink espresso.
Yeah.
So some people are stir it vigorously, really mix it up, mash it up. And some people are like, okay, take it, swirl it, smell it, take 1 sip, then stir it, and this is the flavor progression you're gonna get. There's not a
tradition.
standard. If you go to Vivace, Schomer's the OG, and he's just
Knock
drink
it
it
back.
as soon as I give it to you. Yeah, knock it back. It's all in right now. Don't even let it sit on the counter for more than 5 seconds, or it's done. So there's no consensus on these things, and
Yeah.
I think Jared's pointing to something a little bit different than what you're asking, is that we shouldn't refuse to see the forest for the trees, who are, these super nerdy coffee people who are just extremely focused on this one thing, whether it's the stirring of the espresso or serving it right away. That's important, yes, but they're only looking at that and they're not looking at the bigger scope of their business, where it's oh, thank God he stirred his espresso and drank it right away. There's shit all over my condiment stand. Nobody said hi to the last 3 guests that walk in. The bathroom's a mess, and my people are grumpy.
Right.
But I'm really nailing this espresso thing. And that's what matters because I'm doing my art, traditional espresso culture. Well, I mean, if that's what you want to do.
Maybe. Yeah. And maybe you're telling your whole team that they're killing it. So that's just something.
Which is part of the reason we were shy about hiring coffee geeks in the beginning, is because we had enough experience with people who were so into coffee that didn't care about anything else. They couldn't see the bigger picture of the cafe.
Well, and they saw us as barista competitors, so they assumed that's
They
what
thought we were the
that was
same
the
way.
most exactly. That was the most
Exactly.
important thing to us. So they'd come in and talk about all the shit they knew and how they were gonna keep it dialed and how, like, you know, one of my favorite things is when I was like, customer came in, they asked for the coffee and they wanted some cream, and I was like, we don't even have cream, and I'm like, they're saying that like they're bragging, and I'm like, well, it's good to meet you. Thanks for coming through.
Yep.
That's not gonna work for us.
People like
we'll
cream.
call you.
We'll be following up never.
We'll be following up. We're hiring 3, and we're gonna let you know either way. I could let you know now, but we're gonna wait it out.
Yeah, we're gonna wait it.
We're gonna wait it out.
You'll hear from my HR director.
You'll hear from my huge HR director. By the way, that's
Thanks-
me and Chris.
Thanks for applying.
Yeah, thanks for replying. Chuck won't be calling.
It's not for
Chuck
you.
won't be calling.
Chuck will not be calling.
Cool, guys. Artistry. The work you do. Hey everyone, that's the podcast for the week. Thanks so much for listening. If you heard something that inspired you, let us know, or tell a friend. These are the types of connections that are the most important to us and that we seek to create every day. If there's something you heard and you want to know more about, send us an email to podcast@catandcloud.com or head to our website, catandcloud.com/podcast, and let us know. While you're on our site, check out everything we have to offer. Dive deep into one of our single origin coffees or pick up a little treat for yourself. We have something for everyone, so check it out. Also, find us in the usual places, YouTube, Instagram. We're always there sharing amazing things. All right, that's it. Thanks everyone for being awesome. We'll be back next week.